Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. New legislation is going to ensure that parents can arrange for burial or cremation after a pregnancy loss, after a miscarriage. It's known as the Bereaved Parents Act, and the bill is being sponsored by Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. He practiced as an OBGYN for more than 25 years. Michael New joins us to talk about this. Michael, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Always an honor to connect with you. Tell us about this bill that's being sponsored.
Sure. This is a very solid piece of legislation. What it does is that when a family, is a situation where there's a miscarriage, it gives them the legal rights to the remains of their child. Essentially, if they want to have some kind of a burial of some kind, they have the legal rights to that child and their remains. And it's a much needed piece of legislation. Right now in the United States, there's kind of a whole mishmash of policies about how miscarriages are handled. In some cases, up to the hospital. In some cases, the family, the parents really have no rights. There's only really 18 states right now that give parents kind of any rights to the remains of a child who has miscarried. That should be all 50 states and D.C. And this piece of legislation would do that. So a very good piece of legislation, one that I think should get support from everybody, regardless of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. I just think it's common sense. Miscarriage is traumatic, it's difficult, and if some kind of a burial gives parents closure, that's a positive thing.
How does it function? Parents undergo a miscarriage, especially within a medical institution. What does the bill require?
Well, essentially, what happens is typically, in the past is that, typically parents end up at the hospital and kind of their hospital has a lot of discretion about how to handle the remains of that child. This would actually, give the parents, legal rights that the hospital couldn't just dispose of the remains without the parents' permission. They'd have to, approach the parents and, see what they want to do. So it really puts the ball in the court of the parents, kind of takes things away from hospitals and administrators who may not have a vested interest in what happens. It really puts the power where it belongs, and that's in the hands of parents.
And requiring the medical practitioners to inform parents of their rights puts a conscience decision in the hands of the parents as well, because up to this point, the mishmash of policies means that sometimes freedom of religion and conscience situations gets violated.
Right, absolutely. There are people with religions of faith who really feel that it's appropriate to give that child a proper burial, based on how their religious beliefs are, and if they aren't given that opportunity, that is a violation of their conscience. So I think that this bill strengthens, upholds conscience rights. It's a strong piece of legislation, and I think that people who are pro-life should take a particular interest in this. I think anything we can do that gives some legal rights or some legal protection to the preborn, even if it doesn't affect abortion directly, is a positive step. I think pro-lifers have been shrewd about that. I think that pushing for legislation like the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, Lozier and Connor's Law, which we got passed in 2004, that was a positive step. I think current legislation that would kind of give, children born out of botched abortions, that would give them legal protection and require doctors give them appropriate medical care. That's an important piece of legislation. So this is all good. It's good for parents, good for conscience rights, but there's a real interest pro-lifers should have in this.
That interest that pro-lifers should have is also crucial. If you could inform our listeners about how many hospitals tend to treat the remains of children if their policy tends to be dispositioned by the hospital or the birth center.
Well, right now, there's really only 18 states that really give parents rights. So in 32 states, a lot of the decision is in the hands of the hospital. That doesn't mean that hospitals will always ignore parents, but hospitals don't have to inform parents of their rights. In many cases, they just cavalierly treat the remains, what they call products of conception, and just dispose of them. So there's really only 18 states really right now where parents have strong legal rights to the remains of their miscarried children. In 32 other states, hospitals really have a lot to say in what happens, and that's not good. Again, that does violate the conscience rights of parents, and does, I think, cause problems.
And like you rightly mentioned, a big part of the problem has to do with hospitals don't recognize the dignity of the child that was miscarried. For them, it's classified as medical waste.
Yep, absolutely. Some of these hospitals also, sadly, perform abortions. I mean, many abortions are done in kind of clinics these days, but hospitals still do some. Most hospitals, I shouldn't say most, there are many that really just don't really respect the sanctity of all human life. Whether they perform abortions, whether they dispose of the remains of miscarried children. A lot of hospitals don't act in a Christian or Catholic manner. They don't see the mother and the unborn child as both patients, both deserving of respect and care. And that's unfortunate. And again, this law would again go a long way to putting the decisions in the hands of the parents who care about their child, not indifferent hospital administrators.
Has it gotten any support across the political aisle?
Well, a lot of Republicans are on board with it. They do have a sponsor in both the Senate and the House, Kat Cammack, who's a very solid pro-life House member. She's agreed to be the primary sponsor in the House, so that bodes well. Unfortunately, they're trying to make this, unfortunately, no Democrats have stepped up. They are trying to find a Democrat member of Congress or Senate to serve as a co-sponsor. That has not happened yet. I hope they will, but honestly, it wouldn't shock me if no Democrat does stand up and do this. I mean, Democrats have really shied away from anything that might even be loosely construed as pro-life. I mean, Democrats are not on board with the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, the Born Alive Infant Protections Act that would require doctors to give medical care to children born after botched abortions. No Democrats got on board with that I can imagine. So it's going to be an uphill battle. Republicans do control the House and Senate, and we Republican president. We don't absolutely need Democrats to get this through, but it would be helpful.
I agree, and I'm glad you touched on the fact that they, as a party, the Democrat Party has shied away from anything even remotely resembling pro-life situations. Well, Michael, I want to say thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated, as always.
My guest has been Michael New, and he's been talking to us about the newly proposed Bereaved Parents Act. This bill is sponsored by Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas, and it's co-sponsored by another Republican senator as well. It has yet to receive a single Democrat support, and so we're hoping for that. But one of the good benefits about this, and just to share very personally why I have a vested interest in this bill moving forward, my bride and I had the heartbreak of losing 3 children last year in the womb, and it was perhaps one of the most gut-wrenching experiences for me to have to retrieve the remains of my child and to put my child's remains into a coffin and to prepare for burial. And this is no strange occurrence for many families for whom this is the cross. And to realize also that within a state that does not recognize the remains of a child as a human person, but rather categorizes it as medical waste, we would not have been given the option had we been in a medical institution when our children were passed. And we were blessed that that wasn't the case, that wasn't the struggle we had. And so thankfully, we were able to do so, as gut-wrenching and heartbreaking as it was. And so the benefit of this bill is that for us as Catholics who recognize the dignity of life from the moment of conception, this is a First Amendment defense in some ways. The bill is going to protect the right for a Catholic to express their desire about burial and cremation and even the dignified storage of the remains of the child, rather than classifying it as medical waste that is fit for what the hospitals call hospital or medical disposition, which unfortunately can mean one of two things. Either it's discarded outright or collected in organic waste for the sake of being given to laboratories for testing. Well, thank God that this bill is being proposed. Let's pray that it moves forward, and let's pray for the dignity of the bodies of every child in the womb, in the unborn. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.